January 11th, 2023, somebody apparently threw a Molotov cocktail at the conference center. I'm just going to share some data from 2021 to 2024. 75 buildings were attacked. 61 were vandalism. There's a good chance that a lot of them are maybe former members of the church.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Saints Unscripted. I'm Wilson, I'm one of your hosts today, and I'm here with David. And the topic that we have today is going to be an interesting one to break down. We're talking about attacks that have been made against LDS church buildings. And before we start, we just kind of want to preface that we're just going off the data that we have. We understand that this may not be a complete list just due to inaccurate reports or just understanding that this is a global church that we're dealing with. And so we may not have access to everything that's been reported. So give us a little grace. But we just want to talk about this today. Where do we want to start with this?
Okay. Well, I want to look at some overarching data points here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at some graphs here. Just kidding. I'm on Facebook. Just kidding. I'm not. I'm actually looking at graphs.
Oh, he's locked in.
Locked in. First, I want to look at the type of attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a pie chart here in front of me, and we'll put it on the screen so you can see it too. And it's saying that, and this is since 1830 to now, I believe.
So this is going all the way back.
Yes, but understandably, early on in the history of the church, there was a lot of persecution and a lot of attacks against the saints. But how many church buildings did we actually have?
Actual meeting houses that were attacked.
Yeah, we had the Kirtland Temple. So those are things we need to consider as we go over these data points. Looking at the types of attacks against church buildings, about 50% is vandalism. So I'm assuming that's spray painting, things like that. The next largest one, 25% of attacks. Do you have any guesses?
Arson? Is that
arson?
Is that different? Okay, arson.
Yeah, arson.
Huh.
Lighting things on fire, which is interesting.
Huh.
Actually, we have a breakdown of specifically what building was attacked and where and when and what happened. And there have been some really interesting, some of these are horrible, but some of them are
who
that happened?
thought of
when
that?
did that happen?
Well, someone went and planned and put it forth all the effort to do this random thing.
Yeah, so
what?
January 11th, 2023.
Okay.
Which was not that long ago.
No.
But I never heard about this. Somebody apparently threw a Molotov cocktail at the conference center in Salt Lake.
What?
Never heard about that. And I don't know why they did that or what ended up happening there. I'm sure that there's stuff in the news that you could go look at if you want more details. But anyway, so yeah, 25% of attacks have been arson.
And so does that count as arson if someone is throwing a
actually
Molotov
okay,
cocktail,
you know what?
Or is that vandalism?
That's a good point. So obviously it does involve fire, but I think that one is under the category of explosive. Which actually accounts for 17.8%.
17%
of attacks against church buildings. So I guess Molotov cocktail counts as an explosive. I think I saw one that was people set off fireworks inside of a church building that hurt some people.
Ugh.
Things like that. And I'm sure that there are some actual legit explosives in there mixed in probably as well. So you've got the vandalism as the main chunk, then arson, then explosives. And then it's really small slivers of the pie, 3% firearm attacks. And then I don't even know what the next one is after that. It just gets, it's a sliver. But so that's kind of the type of attack we're looking at. Let's look at where they're happening in the world.
Okay.
So, about 50% are Utah attacks.
Doesn't really surprise me.
We've probably got 50% of the church buildings in the world in Utah. I actually don't know what the stat is.
Maybe more.
Maybe I don't
know. I'm always shocked.
I know
they're back from the airport and there's just steeple after steeple after steeple.
I know there are more members of the church outside of the United States than there are inside of the United States. Is
And
that
that's
right?
I
I think that's right.
I think that's pretty recently, right? Like,
Yeah. But then to have mm, pretty split attacks happening in Utah, about
hmm,
50%, maybe there's a larger proportion happening in Utah
hmm.
if most of the members are outside of Utah. I don't know. That's
Well,
speculation, but
what is interesting to speculate, like, could this be like caused because there's more, I don't know, just because there's more meeting houses built in Utah as opposed to other places? Could be because there's maybe more negative feelings about the church in Utah as opposed to other places for people who maybe aren't members of the church.
could
I don't
be.
know what could kind of be the cause there,
Yeah.
but interesting to
So
speculate, I
50%
guess.
Utah, then the rest of the United States, excluding Utah, accounts for 30% of attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And then South America is another 15.3%. And then Europe is only 3%
Hmm.
of attacks. And then Canada is 1.7. Interesting.
Pretty, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of fitting. Canadians seem pretty chill
Pretty
for the
chill.
most part. Love my
Yeah.
Canadian friends.
I imagine that if they have beef with the church, they're probably there's a good chance that a lot of them are maybe former members of the church. Again, that's my speculation, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to look for points where people might have tension with the church, and that might be one of them.
Understandable. I know from my personal experience, my local meeting house in Texas was vandalized at one point, and I did not find that in the data that we received. So I'm not sure if it like wasn't, maybe like the methods of reporting are different in different states, because it did seem like a lot of those was like Idaho and Utah and Arizona and California. Maybe we just reported it differently in Texas because it wasn't on that report that we got.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that like for us, it just seemed like we never found out who did it, but it seemed like it was just we were in a very religiously charged community. So then maybe there was just some sort of, I don't know, some sort of way to
What did
lash
they
out,
do?
or so we have like we had a sign out in front of our church because like it was kind of like on a weird plot of land where there's like we have like the church right here, like an intersection. We have like a sign like right here,
Okay.
and then someone just spray painted all over the sign and then a bit on the church walls. There's like a lot of spray paint and graffiti,
Just like swear words or
swear
gang
words, and then just
affiliations.
scribbles and whatnot. We don't have a ton of gangs in small town Melissa, Texas. Unfortunately, well, no, fortunately,
Just scribbles.
but yeah,
It's probably a father-son duo of vandalizers.
probably
Some 4-year-old just
probably, yeah, just
scribbling.
going crazy. Yeah, just the artist and then the protege.
Well, now that you bring that up, the master and the apprentice. Now that you bring that up, I'm just remembering that something happened I'm from Oregon,
Mhm.
and we had somebody, it wasn't an attack on the building or vandalizing the building, but we were in sacrament meeting, I think, and the bishop got up and said, we were just informed that somebody has gone around and slashed a bunch of tires in the parking
Oh my
lot
gosh.
on a bunch of the cars. And I don't know whatever happened with that situation. I didn't see it reported on here either, but it also
Mhm.
wasn't directly against the
This is
building,
not
I
the
guess.
building per
Yeah.
se, but it's still affecting the members, and it was
Yeah.
during a service.
Ironically, our bishop at the time was like the manager at like Les Schwab. So I've always wondered, conflict of interest here.
Don't know how it happened, but guys, this is really convenient for everybody.
If anybody needs tires. Yeah, I'm sure
That's
he didn't
actually
do
horrible,
it.
though.
He's a fantastic guy. Just a funny situation. But yeah,
Hmm.
just like violence against not just Latter-day Saints, but religious people in
Mhm.
general. It's a disconcerting thing. And I also want to be clear, we should be clear in this
Yes.
video that like we're not saying that we're persecuted
Mhm.
more than any other faith out there. Like things like this happen to Protestants and Catholics and you name it. And I don't know what slice of the pie we share out of that, or if it's significantly more or less than other
Mhm.
faiths. But I'm really grateful to belong to a church where one of our basic tenets in the Articles of Faith is to let people worship how, where, or what they may.
Absolutely.
I think that's a super important thing. And it's in addition to being a tenet of our faith, I feel like that is one of the tenets of our country, of the United States.
Mhm.
of the U.S. Constitution, even being religious freedom. And it's unfortunate that despite those principles, there's still opposition or angst when people are actually practicing their religion, and we're like, well, I don't agree with that, so I'm gonna spray paint your building or throw a Molotov cocktail at your building or slash your tires, or and like and a lot of this is like pretty harmless, like vandalism. Okay, like don't do it. Really irritating. But some of these are like somebody brought a gun to a meeting and shot and killed some people.
Tragic,
really
things.
Horrible things. I don't know. I think that a lot of these cases, somebody is attacking the church, obviously because they disagree with the church
in some form,
or they think that the church is being harmful in some way. But then the way that they handle that is then to be harmful to others,
which ultimately solves nothing, and if anything, just increases the contention between the two groups. Like I do remember I read one of those reports talking about how I believe it was like a pro-abortion group came and attacked a church or vandalized or damaged it in some sort, and just ultimately, like, not to, I don't know, like make any political statement, but it's just that like an act like that will not resolve anything, will not resolve any sort of conflict or contention, and will really only increase it between the two groups.
Yeah.
So it's just never going to be the right answer.
Well, it's like the same thing that we talk about when it comes to like dealing with critics or people that disagree with you online, right? Like if you just get up in their face and get aggressive with them, like how many success stories come from those interactions? Like how many people are like, oh yeah, this guy got in my face and yelled at me, so I got baptized, or
and I
the
thought,
opposite.
oh my gosh, you're so right. Thanks for yelling at me.
Yeah,
like, no.
It's like it doesn't work that way. And extending that into the real world, I mean, online is still the real world, but like, being aggressive and violent towards people you disagree with is just like probably not the best idea.
No.
So I shared some kind of more general stats, but just to give people an idea of how many events we're looking at, I'm just going to share some data from 2021 to 2024. So between those years, 75 buildings were attacked. 61 attacks were vandalism. 9 were arson. 2 were explosives. And 1 was a firearm attack. We've got some data on that from earlier years as well, but that kind of gives you a general idea. It's more often than I expected it to be.
Honestly. It almost makes me think, like, at some point, does the church ever consider increasing security when it comes to church buildings? Because I understand that, like, I don't know, right now things are, like, obviously church buildings are locked and taken care of. But, like, at some point, is there, I don't know, fencing that should be put around? Maybe additional measures are taken, perhaps, like, I don't know, more callings for security and church care?
I think it probably will differ depending on what area of the world you live in.
True.
Or like how dangerous the specific community might be. The crime rates there. I served my mission in Mexico, in a fairly dangerous part of Mexico. And a lot of the church buildings had like walls or gates, walls and gates around them. So that's a sense of security there. But I don't see anything like that in Utah, where we are now.
True.
So yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they could make it like a calling, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, but could be a lot. Like, it could be a lot of time to commit, a lot of resources to commit to. I feel like it'd have to be daily, not like 24/7 watch over a church building if it would be a security calling.
Maybe like a security committee. And you got to take turns like staking out the building. I don't know. That might make us seem like really paranoid, but
this is fair.
I recall there being some in one community. This is just going to sound really vague, but I remember there was some gun violence in a certain community. And I don't remember if it happened in a church building or a neighboring church or something like that. But for a while, tensions were high.
Okay.
And in a certain ward, it probably wasn't Texas, let's be honest.
I mean,
but in this certain ward, they had, some of the brethren in the ward would be packing and would kind of situate themselves by the doors in case, any threats came to fruition and things needed to be handled. I'm pretty sure the church has a policy against, any kind of weapon in the church at this point. But yeah, I think that is a good question for the church moving forward is, do changes need to be made regarding security measures?
I mean, like pretty much every church has like those, like the double doors. Like there could be metal detectors in there at some point if it
Wouldn't
really
that be
came
so
to that.
sad?
That would be really, really sad. Like,
Like,
checking a sacrament meeting and you have to go through
in
the
our
metal detector.
lifetimes, I feel like we've seen those like be installed in like elementary
Mm-hmm.
schools and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And to see them in church buildings, I mean, would be just another unfortunate reflection on the state of the world that we live in. But
It's unfortunate that it comes to that, but it's also important measures that have to be taken at some point.
yeah,
It
could be.
becomes that drastic of a problem.
I think looking at the data,
Mm-hmm.
most of the attacks are vandalism,
Yes.
which isn't physically harming anyone.
Fair. Very
But
fair.
if it gets to the point where that is more of a concern, then yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the church changes anything.
If you have any extra thoughts or any maybe experiences you want to share, feel free to leave those down in the comments below. And definitely be sure to check out this video right here because it is fantastic. David actually really wants
We don't
you
have a
to
two-shot,
watch
do
it.
we?
It would make his day if you gave it a look.
It would.
Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys next time.